Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Hobby Cheating Q&A live. So today, we're going to sit down for about an hour. These usually go a little over, but we'll try to keep it to an hour. And I'm going to try to answer all of your hobby-related questions. So over on the side here, which would be over on, let's see, that side probably? Nope, I think that's the wrong side. No, that's right. That's right. That side. Ha! Got it. Over on that side, there is a little comments thing, and you can type in comments. So please feel free to start asking your questions, and I'm going to do my best to answer whatever I can, and we'll get rolling. These are always fun to do. I like it. I actually just finished up a project I was working on an hour or two before the show. Been working on editing some new videos. So just putting stuff together. It's always good to finish a project, and got the Duchess posted up that I finished up earlier this week. So yeah, good week, good hobby day. So hope you all are having a great hobby day wherever you are, whatever time it is. But yeah, let's get into it. Oh, Withered Moth says afternoon. How's it going? It's going well. Glad you're here live. A lot of people talking about my pronunciation of Necrons. That's not going to change anytime soon. As a funny aside, I think I got more downvotes on the first Necron video than I do on most anything, and I'm pretty sure it's because I pronounced them Necron. So I guess I'm just inviting more of it by doing it again. That's fine. Such is life. All right, let's see. Hello, everybody. Lots of people joining in, saying hi. Hope everybody's doing well. Oh, yes, I saw. Hello, Emily. I know she's dog sitting today. Very good. Hey, Vince, any advice on how to do charred bones on Hex Wraith is where I'm painting? Yeah, this is a question that's come up a few times. So charred bone is really difficult to do because we have an association in our mind that bone is roughly bone color. There's sort of a subconscious bias there. That being said, yeah, I mean, the answer is stippling. So if you go back and look at you'd have to dig through my projects, but when I did the Fallen Angel bust, and I had her wings burnt at the tips and on fire, that's kind of what you'd want to do. And I think if you had just a little bit of orange, a little bit of flame still there, or heat or something, it would kind of sell the effect. But you would effectively take a fairly small brush, depending on the size of the thing you're working on. Hex Wraiths are pretty covered in robes, so it's going to be hard to sell. That's another problem on something like a Hex Wraith. But you're going to want to just kind of stipple from brown to red, brown, black into black, and like have the black sort of at the tips where things would be the most charred, the most thinned, the most exposed surface area. So that's basically my best advice I can give. It's a tough thing to paint, I'll be honest. It's a very tough thing to sell, especially on such a small scale. If you were doing like a 75 millimeter skeleton, you could probably sell it a lot easier because you could see the texture. Some part of char is texture, right? And that's really hard to sell in that small millimeters, that small size. Oh, well, thank you, everybody, commenting on the Duchess. I appreciate that. Patrick, I've been struggling to figure out some good colors for the horses for my bronze armored Chaos Knights. I was thinking dark gray or blue grays. Sure, yeah, that worked fine. As well with light gray and white and anything like that. But I mean, if they're chaos horses and you want them to look kind of evil, then darker horses have that feeling. But yeah, anything in the, like, you can add in some color. You could add a little green into the mix. It sounds weird, but a green gray will really sell a horse, especially a dark evil horse. Just look back at like Frazetta paintings. He would work green into stuff like that quite a bit, and it'll sell. So that's my advice there. Let's see. Dorn, help transitioning dark to light colors. Airbrush, black Vanguard Hunters, and I want to have light wolf pelts. Help okay. I'm not sure what you mean. Can you re-ask your question, Dorn? Are you asking me like how do you go airbrush from dark to light? Like what do you? I'm not sure what you want me to answer there. But I'm happy to answer it. Just give me a deeper explanation, and I'll give you an answer. Dave, what do you do when you think a scheme is good for your army, but halfway through you decide you don't like it anymore? Start over, I guess. I mean, it depends on how much you don't like it, I guess, and whether or not you want to soldier through. Um, I mean, my answer would be unless it's a real train wreck, you could probably just, go back and add some other color to it, or add some contrast to it, or something, or make a small change, and then bring it into line. Chances are it's not a complete train wreck. It's just something is slightly off. So there's, probably a good chance that you can make some difference there just with minor touch ups. That would be my best advice, I guess. Try to figure out sort of what the most minimal thing you could do to bring it into line. All right. Withered Moth, I've just finished my corn skull crushers, sat on my hobby pile for years, feels so good, just batch painting another 10 Blood Warriors now. Nice. Skull crushers are great. Okay. Wojciech, just finished assembling the Queen of Ruin from Creature Caster. It has quite a bit of small gaps between pieces. What would you recommend for fixing them? Sure. Since it's resin, come here. There we go. This is my preferred stuff. Perfect plastic putty. This comes from Deluxe Materials. There you go. It's really easy. It's water soluble. It dries nice and solid. Yeah, it's great. It's effectively a better version of Vallejo's plastic putty. So you can get a nice big tube at probably most local hobby stores or off the internet from various game stores or Amazon or whatever. That's what I would recommend, because you can put a bunch on there and then get a wet brush and smooth it out, and it sands down real good once it's dry, or real well. Jim, with oil paints, where is a good place to start? Get yourself a good set of Winton oil paints. So that's these, or the Obtolungs, which is these, or some mix of the two. Get them in the colors that you want to paint with, I guess. I mean, if you're just saying I don't have any specific idea, I just want generic colors, then you're some kind of probably like a yellowish ochre color, a cyan, a magenta, or like an alizarin crimson, probably a nice good red, a cold yellow, basically a cold yellow and a warm yellow, a white and a black and a good sepia tone or a burnt umber or something, and you're good to go. That's probably the group I'd start with, something like that. And then you just need some cheap synthetic brushes and some white spirits. I would recommend Mona Lisa or Gamblin, their Gamsol white spirit. Both are quite odorless and easy to use and very clean. Warp Fiend, I'm still not happy with the gold trim on my Black Legion. It looks great up to the edge highlighting stage, and that can make it too busy. Any tips? I try to keep the lines as fine as possible. I mean, with those kind of models, my best advice is, depends on what metal paint you're using to do your highlighting. You can wheel back the hardness of the edge highlight. So if I'm doing something gold and I want a nice soft edge highlight, I use Vallejo Metal Color Pale Burnt Metal. That's a nice soft highlight. You can also go back and clean up your edge highlights through repainting the gold with a thin brush through the center of the thing to get rid of the fat edges if you get the fat edge syndrome, which happens to all of us, by the way. But I mean, it is a very busy model. I'm not sure there's a huge amount you can do. There's just a lot of junk on them, and that edge on top of edge on top of edge is going to make things very busy. You can desaturate the gold some by, obviously integrating shadows through inks and stuff, and in your TMM, and I would highly recommend that. But, yeah, I mean, it's tough. They're always going to look a little busy. You can try focusing your edge highlights on only the upward facing angles, like that can be a way to calm it down some. So something like that. Uh, Rachel, when speed painting an army, how do you decide when to stop taking it further? When you're happy with the look or on a time basis? If you're speed painting an army, you should have a set scheme you know you're painting toward first. So you shouldn't be worrying about quality. You should be doing like a test model or two at the beginning that has appreciable steps you know you want to get to, and that's going to get you to the place you want to be. Like the key with speed painting is you can't be making decisions. Okay? You need to be following a process. So what I mean by that is this. Okay. When you go, like people who have a regular workout regimen, they don't just walk into the gym and then say like, well, what am I going to do today? And then they think about it. And after every machine or after every exercise, they go, well, which one should I do next? No. On Mondays, they do this. On Tuesdays, they do this. On Wednesdays, they do this, and so on. They have a set regimen a day, right? They've cleared out the decision making from it. And that's so they get the optimal amount of work within the time limit they've set, because that's the governing thing. They have like an hour to be at the gym, right? So they don't have time to sit around thinking and to do non-optimal stuff. So it needs to be set. So you do your test model, you get your steps, write them down if you want to. I would highly recommend it. Makes it easier. And then you just follow that recipe over and over again. You repeat, you repeat, you repeat. And where you're ending is wherever your recipe stops, right? Because it's all speed painting is about setting a time, you're painting to a time, not to a look. So there you go. All right. Suspicious pineapple. It is very suspicious. Suspicious pineapple. Are you a Psych fan? I need to know that because it's a very pineapple focused show. All right. Anyways, tried wet blending the first time with watercolors and found I was removing paint rather than drawing the colors into each other. Unsure if it's brush pressure or something else. Sure. So watercolors can be a little tricky to wet blend with because they're gel based and because they're rather transparent. My honest advice for you is do it with something like a Vallejo paint straight out of the pot. If you're going to do it with watercolors, it takes a couple applications. You can do it. It's nice and really smooth, but you want to put it on much thicker than you could possibly imagine. Like you need to put a little glob of paint on there. And then the key is you spread the gel into each other and then you wipe your brush and you smooth it out. Okay? And so like watercolors can wet blend really well, but it has a very unique method of achieving that. If you use a more traditional liquid medium layer paint like a Vallejo or, I don't know, Pro Acryl or AK Interactive or something like that, you'll find it to perhaps match more to what your expectations are if you're just starting and knowing that it's the first time you're wet blending, in my mind, how you're probably moving your brush and doing that kind of thing. Okay? So that's my advice. David, hi Vince, giving Alariel's beetle some wings. Any advice on sculpting bug wings? Oh goodness, no. That's outside of my purview, my friend. I am not a sculptor. I'll tell you right now. I did sculpting once. I took a weekend course on sculpting miniatures, and at the end of that, I realized I never want to sculpt anything again in my entire life. I hate it. So, I'm not the person to ask. I mean, I'm sure the basic answers I can give you are like, you're going to have to use a frame. You need to make like a wire frame, and then you're going to need to work around that. But beyond that, I would reach out to somebody like Trevelyan, who's a really good sculptor, or somebody like that who does a lot of sculpting in the painting community, and they can probably help you out. I'm sorry, that one's just outside of my ballywick. Okay. Oh, Jim, this is in. So Jim had a follow up to his earlier thing about oil paints. Tried on a large cloak, dress, skin, etc. first. Yeah, skin or big cloaks are the best place to start learning with oil paints. Big, flat surfaces or things like that. Stuart Hastings, hey Vince, what's your advice for enjoying painting as much as possible? How do you keep motivated after all this time? This is a question I get asked every so often, and it's not something I'm going to be able to give you a convincing answer on, because the answer is I'm addicted to it. Why do addicts keep doing anything? Because they've rewired their brain chemistry to appreciate the thing. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the answer is I can try to disassemble why I like it, but my answer is probably I always have projects that I'm passionate about, and I only paint what I want, and I paint it to the level that I like to paint it with, too. And I like sharing it with people. I like being creative. You know, the key is to not get yourself beat down by army painting. Um, I think a lot of people would enjoy it more if they stopped worrying about getting an army done in the next 2 weeks and just started thinking about, like, what can I do with this piece that'll be fun? Always be challenging yourself with deliberate practice. So whenever you pick up a miniature, make it a learning opportunity. If you're challenging yourself and learning at the same time you're painting, it will be more engaging, and you'll have more fun doing it. Share whatever you paint in various communities. It's great to share and engage with other people who are also in the painting stuff. Um, yeah, and explore different scales, different sizes. Paint a one-off from an army you're not going to play every so often. Just stuff like that, because it lets me try new things. Whether it's a new product or a new technique, or to push myself further on something. The Duchess that I just painted today, I really wanted to play with the reflective light on the sword. It was just sort of a big thing I wanted to do. And so that took a lot of work back and forth. And I really liked how it came out. I thought it came out pretty cool, having that neat sort of reflection of the red in the sword. I thought was fun, as well as the reflection of the hilt. And that was my thing that I was really excited to do on that miniature, and it was challenging and stuff like that. So I think that's a big part of it. Joe, do you ever put a wash like Citadel on Vallejo metal color? No. I tried it and worried me that I could see little metal flakes start floating in the wash. No, I do not. I do not wash my metals ever. I do not believe you should ever wash metals ever, unless you're trying to make old, rusty, crusty metal, in which case, hey, wash away and go nuts. I use inks and normal matte paints, and I paint them in a sort of true metallic style, right? Now, I'll sometimes use an oil wash over Vallejo metal color, because I can wipe that away. If you saw metal floating in your wash, then you either put too much wash on, you push too hard with your brush, or something you did to pull up the paint. When you put wash on paint, it's not that your the metal color is specifically weak. In fact, it's quite a durable paint because it's aluminum. But the issue that you're running into is anytime you get acrylic paint super wet and you let it sit there, if you touch it real hard with your brush, you have the chance to pull flakes up. But so there you go. There's my thoughts on that one. Matthew. Hi, Vince. Thanks for always putting out such amazing content. Oh, well, thank you very much. That's very nice. I don't think that's the case, but I appreciate it. My question is about highlighting blue. I play ultramarines and always struggle with painting them in the rich blue they're pictured in. Sure. I mean, the key there is glazes. So if you want to get that rich blue, the key is always some final glazes of a good, rich, like, ultramarine blue. I mean, I don't know if they're named after the paint, like if that's a joke someone had originally, but certainly that's, I believe the main color they're meant to be based off of. But the key, once you put in all your highlights and shadows, is then to go back and glaze in some of that blue. It's just a very thin, controlled glaze over the whole thing, and that'll bring the color back into line, and make it feel more rich and saturated. As a matter of fact, if you want to see that in very precise action, I know Juan Hidalgo Miniatures is in the chat right now, and he has a great channel. And you should go check him out, because he does a lot of that kind of painting, like that sort of heavy metal style painting that's really great. And if you watch how he does it and how he reincorporates saturation through glazes at the end, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So you could go watch like his most recent video, which was on the Shield Knight and the red non NMM, and he's doing it with red, but he has some previous videos on blue as well. Okay, let's see. Daniel, hi Vince. I started layering up with my paint mixed around 50-50 with diluted FW ink. It's been a game changer for speed and smoothness. Thanks for the tips. Hey, absolutely, yeah. I mean, using ink to dilute your paints is such a wonderful thing, especially when you want to get it. You get it. It has all the flow and all the saturation and everything like that, and opacity, but still shows some of the undershade. Like it creates this wonderful mixture, and it's so much easier to paint with. Hello, Dave. Michael Anderson. Any advice for painters with shaky hands? Stabilize as much as you can. That is to say, don't like you're gonna tend to shake more the more free the rest of this is. Buy yourself a good square lap pillow. You can go to like a Joann's Fabrics or a Michael's or something like that, and they'll have like places that do craft stuff. And anywhere you can get these online too. You can buy like the foam inserts to make pillows, right? Because they sell those big foam inserts for people who are doing little pillow crafting projects and crochet and stuff. You can get a big square one or something like that. Put it in your lap. So first, make sure you're sitting so that your legs are at a right angle, right? So your chair should be at a height that your knees are at a right angle. Then you're gonna have the foam pillow in your lap, and you're gonna set your elbows on that. You're gonna lock your wrists together, and you're gonna paint like with the miniature holder here in your hand, and your brush like this, right? And everything is then supported and locked in place. It's the best I can say. I know that I think Black Magic Craft did a video recently on dealing with shaky hands because he has one, or he has that challenge, I should say. So you may want to check that out as well. Okay. Tristan. Oh, sorry. Hold on. There's a question. Daniel, I've had problems locating Vallejo metal colors everywhere sold out, and they can't seem to locate stock. Well, then my unending crusade, my zealous mission to get this in everybody's hands is working. Any tips on vendors? Yeah, I mean, Michigan Toy Soldier is a good one. You said that. Competition Minis might have it. So you might want to give them a look. That would be one. I don't know if you've checked yet, but yes, any of the bigger game stores carry it. So I mean, a lot of those big game stores have presence. Maybe like Atomic Empire. They have an online presence. Maybe Noble Knight Games. Those kinds of things. You can try all those stores that have a big online presence. Tristan, I'm going to be building out a painting studio soon. Any recommendations for lighting or layouts? One that's comfortable to you. A good L desk will do you a lot. I mean, you've seen my video on my setup. Nail polish racks are all around me. My light, which is off here right now, but I'll move it in so you can all see it, is like this. It's a big architecture light that I can pull in over top of me. And then I have other lights as well behind behind there that kind of flood the area. Lots of light. But yeah, I mean, just find a comfortable L-shaped desk is my best advice because that gives you space to work. Get as much off your desk and onto the walls as you can through like hobby cheating stuff or through nail polish racks. I was thinking about the hobby cheating video. Yeah, that kind of thing. All right. Patrick Fisher, would Pro Acryl bright warm gray be what you mean about incorporating greens into the gray? Kind of. It has a little bit of a green tint to it, but there's lots of grays out there that have it. I mean, literally, you could just take some green paint, some like deeper green paint, like a gunship green or something from Vallejo, and mix that into mostly gray, and that would work. So you can make it yourself if there's not one exactly like. Let's see. But yeah, their bright warm gray or dark warm gray would both be great for a base color for that. Withered Moth, on the note of using oils, do you recommend anything other than Q-tips? They fray easy and leave fluffy bits all over my minis. Yeah, I don't use Q-tips at all. I know some people really are about that life. I'm not. I am all about makeup sponges. Little tiny makeup sponge wedges. You can buy makeup sponge wedges on Amazon or other places, or go to a beauty store, and you can buy them in packs of hundreds for a few bucks. They'll be like at the dollar store, places like that, Target, anywhere like that will sell these big bags, and they're very soft. Because they're meant to wipe around people's eyes and on your skin and your face, so they're very soft and they don't leave fibers behind. So absolutely, all about it. That's my normal wipey. Let's see. Okay, I'm getting behind. Need to catch up here. Dorn Jr. Airbrushed armor is black, but they are all wearing pelts. I would like to paintbrush wolf pelt to a brown off-white and worried I will be fighting it being too dark. No, I mean, I don't think so. Airbrushed armor is black. They're all right. I'd like to paintbrush the wolf pelt to a brown off-white. No, just use a nice brown that has a good coverage. I think is what you're going to do to set your base. And there's plenty out there. But you could, just pick any decent strong brown and you should be able to go over the black without any kind of issue. Let's see. Recently found out how awesome inks are. Any brand you recommend? Sure. Starting ink set. Just go buy yourself like the Vallejo game inks. They come in a nice set of 8. They're very cheap. Beyond that, then you're going to want to go to your Daler-Rowney FW. Oh, that's actually wrong one. Sorry. Here we go. Your Daler-Rowney FW inks. If you can't get those, something like the Vallejo artist inks are a good substitute depending on what's available in your area. Yeah, those are the inks I use the most. So there you go. Days. Hey Vince, I've got an idea for a bust that involves tears, cutting through the dirt and grime. Oh no, it is tears. Okay. Spelled the same. Through the dirt and grime of a soldier's face. I would also like to do old dried blood spatter on his face and cloth. Any tips? Wow. Stipple on something with actual texture, like mix some pigment in, and then actually try to, then while that's still drying, take a wet brush and just start dragging down from the eyes to create natural tear patterns. Now, as to like blood spatter, sure. I mean, that's easy. You can do that in a lot of ways. If you want it to be very natural, I mean, just get either like some blood for the blood god or some Tamiya, clear red or whatever, and you put it on like the tip of a brush, and you can either then flip it at it, or you can take your airbrush and blow air at it, and those will give you very natural patterns. Frostform, is metal color bronze the best for painting bronze in your experience? Well, I wish there was a metal color bronze. Sadly, there's only Vallejo metal color only comes in copper and gold. Bronze is just a really tough color to do with it. My best advice is you take just the copper and you brown it out through the addition of like an umber ink, and generally I found that to be pretty effective. So I really wish they would expand their gold and copper range into a good bronze. But sadly, they have not. Let's see. Benjamin, do you think mini painting will eventually split off into more different branches? I know there's sort of different styles already, but nothing comparing to realism versus surrealism in traditional art. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's still a very young art form, obviously. Canvas painting goes back that just forever and ever and ever, centuries upon centuries upon centuries, right? Will it eventually split off? I mean, yeah, probably, as people continue to push it. But I'm not one for good predictions. I hope more people do more experimental stuff, and find styles of art that are compelling to them. And if that necessitates a sort of movement that happens, sure, I have no issue with that. I think it'd be cool. Irrational. Hey Vince, I'm prepping a Craft World army using a sea theme. Sounds cool. Planning to airbrush my blue and green tones over a gray-blue metallic base. Should I go with ink or contrast to best preserve luminosity? That's a good question. If you mean you want that metal shine, I mean the contrast paints will dull it more than if you use a sort of glossy ink like an FW or the scale inks or whatever. The scale inks are super glossy. They'll really preserve it. You could also use the Tamiya clears. Those would also preserve the glossiness of it. That might honestly be your best bet. You might want to go look at getting some of the Tamiya clears. Those are super glossy, super transparent, really high quality through the airbrush. But that being said, if you don't have that, if you already have like the FW inks, those are a great pull and probably what I would use, assuming you want to preserve the metal shine. If you're more interested in just having like a soft shine, then I would use contrast, as it'll be a little more matte. Okay. Let's see. Josh, hey Vince, how do I sell a Nurgle Green slime effect. Nurgle's Rot technical paint isn't doing it for me. And I also need more than tiny GW pot if I'm basing an army. Yeah, sure. So I mean, I like Nurgle's Rot as a sort of finishing thing or as a extra element to it. But if you're talking about making pools of slime, then you use some kind of just resin water mixture, and you mix in inks into that, like deep green and yellow green inks into that, and you do it in kind of layers. So you can just do like a pour of a dark green and then mix in some yellow green and do a little pour over top of that. And when I say pour, I mean it can be very small. If we're talking about bases, you might just be taking a pipette and like putting a couple drops on in that place, let it dry, come back, put a couple more drops on over top of it, let it dry. And then you can go in with the Nurgle's Rot and put a little bit on the top, just as kind of like a little bit of gathered goop on there. But yeah, the key is like everything else, it's contrast. It's the same thing if you watch my how to paint realistic blood splatter video, I don't just use blood for the blood god, right? I use a bunch of different colors of paints and then blood for the blood god is the finisher. So the key is there, you still have to preserve that contrast. It's the same thing with rot and goop. You have to use different colors to create a contrast, and then the Nurgle's Rot can be kind of a glossy finisher. Well, Jack, when can we expect the next undesigned episode? I don't know. We'll probably do season 3 sometime. We got kind of through the end of where we wanted to go with season 2, and I'm sure probably next year we'll do a season 3. So there you go. Alex, hi Vince. Can you recommend any good baby pink paints? Oh, baby pink. Sure. I mean, just good old Vallejo Model Color has a nice baby pink. I assume that's what you're meaning. They're just straight pink. It's pretty baby pink. AK Interactive makes a nice baby pink. Scale 75's Fluorescent FX pink is a nice baby pink. I'm just looking around my wall. War Colors in their 88 line. I have to stand up to get this one, but it's a really good one. War Colors in their Nostalgia 88 line, which I do love this line. This is a really great line of paint, by the by. They make a titillating pink, which I believe is supposed to match like some kind of original color from their range. Yeah, these are great, and that is super baby pink. So that's a great range. I gave it a review a while back. I've honestly like it's in the pots because haha, that's what they were all in then, which I hate pots. But paint wise, I do love the paints. Okay. Great. Let's see. Moving through. Okay. Sock Addict. I see lots of advice saying don't use metallics on wet palettes. I've not had any problems. Is there a good reason not to do it? Yeah. Water breaks down metallics. Acrylic binder is really important in metallics because the metallic pigments have to be spread really evenly. And if they're not, you will not get a metallic effect. It's not like matte paint. It's just a different effect because of the opacity of the pigment itself and generally the size of the pigments because they're larger. So wet palettes introduce too much extra liquid to your metal paints and breaks them up, and they have a less convincing shine. The reason, if you look at my stuff, that it looks like my things reflect pure white. Okay, the things I paint, and that's one because of Vallejo Metal Colors, and two because I don't thin them down at all, right? So there you go. And in general, it can also soak into your sponge and stuff like that. I don't know how much getting metallic flakes into your wet palette's actually a thing, but I know that I don't want it on there making it gross because it's going to be a mess to clean up you've seen in my videos that I've had paint run off the edge of my piece of paper and into my sponge, and that's hard enough to clean. I certainly don't want to try to be scrubbing metal pigment out of it. Rummy Bum. Hey Vince, I'm going to paint my Chaos Warriors in a brown iron type of color using Vallejo Metal Colors. Have any tips for large amount of metallic armor? Look interesting. Yeah, sure. I mean, start with like a burnt iron, add in a little brown ink, and create the contrast up into a pale burnt metal. Again, it should still reflect even if it's brown, and do a couple final glazes of like a sepia colored ink over the whole thing, or most of it at least. Let's call it 80%. Don't hit the highest highlight or something like that. That's what I would say. Okay. Oh, very cool. Tristan has some advice for the sculpting beetles. That's cool. Juan, uh, why am I so popular? I don't think I am, man. Have you seen what other people pull down on subs? I'm pretty sure they're more popular, but that's okay. I'm glad. I'm very happy for where the channel's at, and I'm so grateful to everybody who's watching and who watches the videos and thinks they're good and stuff like that. But I definitely don't think I'm popular. But that's okay. Believe me, my wife keeps me in line and reminds me that I am an idiot quite often. So there you go. Benjamin. Oh, okay. Yep, just answering the parchment paper question on the wet palette. That kind of stuff. All right, Days. Second question for you, Vince. How do you go about making cold human skin tone? I have difficulty adding blue and green to a skin without it turning gray and gross. So the key with cold skin tone, like, it depends what you mean. If you mean somebody who's actually blue, right, like a blue person, like a frost giant or something, then the key is to actually just work in blues and have your if you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 being the highest highlight, 5 being the low light, your 1 and 2 should be traditional sort of maybe Caucasian flesh tones or whatever you're going for there, and your 3, 4, 5 should be blues into like a deep purple at the end to introduce warm shadows and cold highlights. Now, if we're talking about making somebody look cold, I have a video on painting pale flesh, and that's more or less the same thing, because flesh will get very pale, it'll get very pink, so you don't actually want to work in much in the way of blues. The key is to just add a little tiny amount of it in. It's like with blue and flesh tone, you have to be so minimal. The other key is you want to get your shadows warm in the same way as I just mentioned with blue skin tone. Cold highlights, warm shadows. So hopefully that helps. I'll probably do a fully focused like cold skin tone video at some point in the future. Dave, thank you so much for your autumnal base vid. Really helpful for my Necrons going for an overgrown theme with war paint from the tribes who thought they were statues. Have you any weathering advice? On the statues, I mean, I have lots of weathering advice. I'd say go watch any of my videos on weathering, probably more than I could say here. But I mean, pigments and oil paints for streaking and grime and things like that is what I tend to do. Lots of stippling. Be random. Break up your brain's desire to have everything be ordered, and just use a lot of stippling and random patterning and stuff like that. Okay. Northern Cross. Hello, Vince. 2 questions. Are crown caps more suitable for detailed work over closed cap? Crown caps more suitable for detailed work. Oh, you're talking about, okay. Yeah, on your airbrush. Sorry. Took me a minute to get my head into exactly what you were asking there. My dogs have decided to come down because my wife is here. Yes. Okay. That's enough.
I'm looking for their lady.
She's over there. I am online right now.
Okay.
Okay. At any rate, no, I don't like the crown. Let's get to what he means. So the crown caps are things that have like your airbrush where it has a tip like this. Okay. Where it's not all closed. I despise all crown caps because they're very hard to cap and backfill, and it's like a standard part of my process. So I've never noticed any real difference in the performance of the airbrush in any way, because I do have airbrushes with different caps. I've never noticed a difference in the performance of them because of that. So I always like just a standard full cap that I can put my finger up against and go. Now something like the Iwata Highline, which has an angled cap, it's more trapezoidal in shape. That's actually my preferred shape. Yes, it's going to trap more paint inside in the long run, and you have to clean it a little more. But it's the way it directs the air will generally keep your paint flowing smoother.
I like her a lot.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad. All right. Nigel, I know you like to use varnishes a lot, but do you varnish metal color? No. Easy answer. Nope. I never varnish metallic paint. Ever. I paint everything matte, then I varnish the model, then I paint my metallics. Let's see. Tim. Hi, Vince. Not really a hobby-related question, and my apologies. This is something you prefer not to talk about, but is there a reason why you don't have a Patreon, Amazon affiliate links, etc.? Yeah, sure. It's just, this isn't my job. I might do an Amazon affiliate link at some point in the future. It's laziness more than anything else, I suppose. Like, I have a job. I enjoy my job. I like what I do for a living. I do this because I really enjoy teaching and sharing stuff and hanging out with all of you. I mean, that's my motivation. So I'm not really trying to make money off it. I definitely don't want to have a Patreon right now. Like, if I ever decide to make this my full-time job, then I'll have a Patreon. But I would never put content behind a paywall ever. So if you ever see me announce a Patreon in the future, it's not going to be, hey, there's going to be content behind a Patreon. That will never happen. Zero content I produce will ever be behind any kind of paywall ever from now until the end of time. Okay? It's my solemn promise. If I introduce a Patreon, it will do because I'll be doing a bunch of private coaching, and that'll just be the way I facilitate it. Because I would love to just teach people how to miniature paint. That's the thing that would draw me in. So, I mean, I would do it just so I could have private one-on-one coaching with people every week, and I'd schedule hours and hours and hours of it because I really love teaching people how to paint. I think it's super fun. So that would be what I would do if I ever went that direction in the future. But like I said, I really love my job, so I like what I do for a living. I like the people I work with, so I'm lucky. I work for a good company and work with good people, so it's hashtag blessed. I don't know. Like, it's not the kind of thing I'm wanting to step away from. Okay. Let's see. Yep, cool. So, yep, mentioning the Black Magic Craft Shaky Hands video. Cool. Will I do a 50K special? No. I don't tend to celebrate milestones like that. Whatever. We'll hit 50,000 hopefully pretty soon for subs, and that's great. But no, I probably won't do anything special. Everybody who's subbed, I value everyone equally. I value 37,276 as much as I value 50,000. So everybody who's here, I'm grateful they're here. Aviad, hi Vince, thanks for another Q&A question regarding scale 75. Picked up a couple of sets and loving them for glazing and wet blending, but really struggling with base coats. Any advice? Yeah, I mean, the gel-based paints like that are tough to base coat with. My biggest advice is don't base coat with them. I mean, it sounds really flippant, but I went to the doctor. I said, doctor, it hurts when I go like this. He said, don't go like that. Scale for me are more about wet blending and creating contrast and stuff like that. I tend to base coat with an airbrush or with something that has more covering power. So Pro Acryl or Vallejo Model Color or AK Interactive's new line, their third gen acrylics, anything like that. And if I need to, if I'm trying to get a strong base coat, like there's a sort of, or Chimera Colors, another really great one. Like there's just sort of a set of paints I have in my head that I know, like, this is when I need to really set a strong color. This is what I use. So that's my answer. Not the best answer, I know. Kind of a flippant answer, but it really is. Like, sometimes the answer is use the tools for what they're good at, right? Like, I'm trying to screw a screw into a wall, and it's not working with my hammer. Well, I've identified the problem, right? Okay. Where are we at? All right. There we go. Michael, if you are painting for gaming, anyone complaining about your abilities are people that you do not want to game with. Yeah, there you go. It's a good answer back. Somebody talking about painting for gaming. Yes. Okay. Let's see. Thoughts on airbrushing the liquid gold copper? Seems like a speedy way to... Oh, the alcohol-based paints? Yeah, you can do it. You got to be, like, fast, because that stuff dries like that. So, yeah, it can airbrush. You just want to be careful with it through your airbrush, because it will dry and coat the inside of your airbrush, and then you got to get in there and scrub the thing with alcohol. But, yeah, it's a great way. Like, if you're doing, like, custodes or something, I would absolutely probably get out something like the liquid gold. And put it through the airbrush, because it will produce such a perfect sheen, right? Now, in general, if I'm airbrushing, I much prefer Vallejo Metal Color, because it's a standard acrylic paint and just 100 times easier to work with. Let's see. Keys. Vince, other than making extremely thinned glazes, filters, are there any other situations where using a glaze medium to paint ink is preferable over water? I mean, just when you're needing to, I mean, yes, all the time, but keep in mind, paint thinness is the name of the game. That's it. Like, that is actually the whole thing. Okay? All of miniature painting is just being able to properly control and apply the consistency of your paint. That's it. It's that and brush control. Those two things are everything. That's the whole shooting match. So, if you find something like Glaze Medium helps you control the thinness of your paint, depending on the paint you're working with, then it can be a useful tool anytime, even if you're just trying to get some layers going, right? You're just, again, like I would reference my understanding paint thinness video that I did recently, because that really kind of breaks it down. I mean, glazing is a huge part of everything that gets painted. That doesn't always mean just I'm glazing the whole miniature. It can just be like a final step because I'm repeating everything I do many times. So, sure. But then again, you don't have to use that stuff. You look at somebody like Trent Dennison, who uses like his Joe Sonia magic mix on most everything he paints, whether he's doing layers or whether he's doing thin glazes. It's just how much of it he uses, right? But it's sort of his mix because it has a little bit of retarder, a little bit of flow improver, a little bit of medium. So it's just kind of a nice mix of everything. All right. Decimation. What's a good brand of toaster? That's a good question. I don't know. I have a toaster that I got for my wedding more than 17 years ago, and it's the toaster that I've used whenever I make toast for 17 years. So that one seems pretty good. Whatever brand that is. The one I got at my wedding brand. So thank you to whoever gave me that toaster. Very useful thing. A lot more use out of that than the gravy boat. All right. TD McDonald, what are your thoughts on making a desaturated palette work on minis? Can value contrast alone do enough work to make minis readable pop from a distance? Yeah, sure, absolutely. You can use a completely desaturated palette. There's lots of miniatures out there that'll do that. It's not my favorite way to paint. Obviously, I love bright, insane, punch you in the face colors. But yeah, sure, absolutely. You can do all desaturated. You have to rely a lot, as you said, on contrast of value. But if you're kind of pushing that to its limits, and your color balance amongst the desaturated tones is still grabbing, like, you have to focus a lot more on the other things like composition and value contrast. But yeah, sure, it can happen. Dave the Barbarian, what airbrush compressor would you recommend for a beginner? I would recommend you go buy like the master airbrush compressor set, airbrush and compressor little bundle set for between $80 and $100, depending on what bundle is available when, because it's all just repackaged stuff. And it comes with everything you need to get airbrushing. Because when you start, you will break your airbrush. And that airbrush, that G22 or G23 or whatever happens to come with there, can literally be replaced for $20 to $30. So it is a very cheap investment. When you can get an airbrush cheaper than most miniature kits, you're not going to care if you break it. And you will. You'll gum it up, you'll screw it up, you'll do something wrong, you'll bend a tip, it'll happen. Nothing wrong with it. We all do it. It's the same reason I don't give I don't give anything. I don't have any kids. But it's the same reason I didn't get when I went out and bought my car when I turned 16, I didn't go buy a nice car. I bought an old crappy car because I knew I didn't know how to drive and would probably beat it up. So there you go. So yeah, that's just look up Master Airbrush kit on Amazon and you'll find the thing. And then once you get a few months in and you've kind of learned the ropes, then you make a little investment into something decent. Again, please do not go to like the top of the line and spend $400 on an airbrush for your second airbrush. Go buy like an Iwata HPCS. Beautiful workhorse airbrush, fantastic. Still my workhorse airbrush was my first airbrush. Still one of my all-time faves. Not what I use all the time, but a great brush. Should I avoid Zenithal highlighting models when they're also going to get metallic paint? No, unless they're all metallic. So, like, I don't Zenithal the skeleton frames of Imperial Knights, for example, because that's an all-metallic thing. If they're just going to have some metallic on them, then no, I absolutely still Zenithal them, because I want that for all the matte areas and to understand the volumes, and it's a roadmap as much as it's anything else. Hi, Vince. Ever painted a Blood Bowl team? I have not. I keep wanting to get the Skaven Blood Bowl team. And because I want to expand some of my like Eshin stuff for my Skaven, but I just never get around to it. I mean, if I paint one, it's going to be that one. I'll tell you right now. Vince, are all artist inks pretty much identical? Can you substitute one brand for another without issues? For the most-ish part, there is some difference in reactivation there, especially amongst some of the colors, so you do have to be a little careful. But for the most part, if we're talking about the Vallejo artist inks, the Liquitex artist inks, or the Daler-Rowney artist inks, yes. As long as they're the artist inks, excuse me, they're all pretty similar. So if you can get one of those in your area, you can use them. You just may find, depending on how wet you're getting your later layers of paint, you could reactivate them, so you might need a varnish in between. Something like that. Vince, have you ever used the Dr. Faust inks? Are you talking about Dr. P.H. Martin's inks? Is that what you mean, Emily? If so, do you find any particular differences between that and Forge World, or Forge World? That's how I read that. FW or Vallejo. Yeah, I've used the Dr. P.H. Martin stuff a few times. I don't like them as much. They don't seem to have the same quality, and they have some reactivation issues. So that would be my feedback, but other people might have different opinions. But that's been my experience with the few I've tried. I'll openly admit I have not used the entire range. Oh, nice. Withered Moth says, I find adding purple ink to the gold makes a nice bronze copper color. Cool. Good shout out. I like that. I will openly admit I have not put some purple ink in that. I'll give that a shot and see what it looks like. See? Always fun. Okay. Oh, there you go. For bronze with Vallejo metal color, try mixing gold into jet exhaust. Yeah, I want to play around with taking some of the silver colors and mixing in brown inks to see if I can get a good bronze. I'm going to play around with that actually in a future video, just to let's make some bronze, right? And actually have a fun time playing with inks and those kind of things to make unusual colored metallics. That'll be a fun video at some point. Oh, I heard you say thinning with inks was in a recent Hobby Cheating, or is that in the Inks Glazes videos? It's probably sprinkled through many videos. I couldn't tell you. I do it quite often, so I'm it's in the painting sharp lines video, and it shows up pretty often because it's a pretty normal way I paint. Warp Fiend mentions Uhu glue plus Tesseract glow is a great method for slime. Nice, yeah, absolutely. Uhu glue is your go-to. What he's referencing there is this stuff. Uhu. This is your slime maker. Your slime maker, your spit maker, your blood strand maker, any of that kind of stuff. You want that. You got to get that Uhu. Irrational. Vince, many thanks. Your supposition was correct. I may make it preserve the shine. Cool. There you go. Okay, awesome. Hey, Vince, just wondering any tips for making blood effects. I've used Uhu glue, but I'm interested in a free-falling globule kind of effect that doesn't connect to other areas, if you get me. Oh, ho, ho, I do. I do get you, and I do have an answer. And it's right here beside me. How about that? So, this is how you do it. This will be a video at some point. Okay? So, this is a long, thin plastic string. Like, you can buy bunches of thin little wire from craft stores, like thin little plastic wire. That's how thin it is. You can also just take it off of, the tags that come on your clothes. They have that little plastic thing on it. You use that. And then you can do it in a couple different ways. So you can then touch some super glue to it, kind of run it down and let it build up into bubbles. And then once you have little tiny bubbles, you just touch those with gloss varnish and you let it dry. And you'll build a nice little strand of little blood drops. Now, I built a whole bunch here because these are meant to be cut. You don't use all this. You make one big strand and then you can cut it, right? And then you just paint it red. Yeah, great for doing when you make them in a neutral color. You can blood over them, you can goop over them, you can do all that. And then you can have little free flowing strands. Let's see. Follow up to my earlier question about metallics and wet palettes. Does that include Vallejo metal color and scale 75? Yes, I don't put anything on a wet palette. Never. No metallics go on wet palettes. Never, ever, ever, ever. I don't even touch my brush to a wet palette if it has metallics anywhere in the brush. Question, how would you paint true metallic metal black metal? The key is a very small volume. I would start with a dark Vallejo metal color like magnesium, or something like that, or gunmetal gray. And I would, it's the same way I would paint. It's the same way you look at my, if you watch my non-metallic black video, I would use the exact same technique. I would just be laying down those glazes of black or blue black or brown black over and pulling down over the existing metal. That's exactly how I would do it. It's actually a pretty fast thing to do because you're just sort of applying one thing and then creating all shadow and letting the little bit of reflection act as your highlight. Would you recommend a place to mail order paints, even one tube at a time? Yeah, Michigan Toy Soldier, I mean, is the place to be. Or Michigan Toy Soldier or Competition Minis both have a great selection, and I like both of them. They're both run by great people who have wonderful shops and are just generally very helpful and have great customer service. So those would be my two recommendations. And I've oftentimes ordered just like a couple bottles of paint from them. All right. Brandon, hey Vince, I picked up the Reaper Vex to get into airbrushing. Oh, cool. Aaron's new airbrush, yeah. Any tips for airbrushing with watercolors, layer paints? I also airbrushing tips in general would be great. Yes, I have a video. I have a hobby cheating called Airbrushing with Watercolors, so go watch that. I would recommend that highly. That'll get you started on the basics. And then I also have several other videos. Would be like watch the most recent video on cleaning your airbrush fast. That's probably a good one to watch. And then watch like the Zenithal highlighting and glazing video, which I do with an airbrush, which is like hobby cheating 75 or something. It was pretty early. Those three will get you on the right road. Shadow, hey Vince, nice to catch you live. Have you ever tried soft pastels for minis? I recently saw Daisy Stalls painting horses with it, and I was blown away. Never tried it. Soft pastels. I'll make a note of that and give it a try at some point. I've crushed up pastels for pigment. I've never tried that in actually that way. Yes, there was a dog fight in the background. They like to play with each other when they come down here. Yeah, I do need my own Pachow, definitely. I need some way. I wish when doing it live, there was a way to just like grab links and share them out besides me literally going and copying it and posting it in the chat or something. Oh, somebody asked, what's my day job? I'm a product manager for a company. So I make software. I make insurance software, which sounds very boring, but I enjoy it. Lost my place. There you go. Okay. This has always struck me as a side hobby. Aside from mini wargaming, I can't think of anyone who can get away with doing this for a full-time job. Oh, there's many people who do this as a full-time job. Most of the big, like, hobby YouTubers do this as their full-time job. So like Miniac would just be an easy example. I mean, he has a very successful channel, and this is his full-time job. This is what he does. Which is why his videos are really high quality and really well produced. I mean, he does awesome work. Are you going to continue to work with oils? Yes. Can we expect more videos of oil painting projects? Yes. Easy answers. Hey Vince, do you ever use chipping fluids like AK or Ammo MIG? Yeah, I don't like Vallejos. I think theirs is crap, but yes, I've used chipping mediums before, and I like them. I have a video on using chipping medium, that and salt weathering. I like both those things. I don't do it very often. I kind of tend to prefer to paint it more, but yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. I don't find myself with the need to do it very often, is what I'll say. But I do have a video on it. Wondering when you refer to painting over static terrain bits, etc., does that include tough static grass? Yes, and I mean with the tufts, I force wash into them and dry brush over the little tufts. With static grass, I will tend to airbrush color changes and stuff like that into it, just to create some subtle variation. So there you go. You can also just take some wash, fill it in a nice big brush, and just kind of touch it to the grass, let it flow out there, and then pick your brush up. So you just touch, pick your brush up, touch, pick your brush up. Twilight, hi Vince, love your stuff. Have you considered adopting? Oh, okay. Yeah, I answered that question previously. I mean, my camera is pretty nice. I don't know if it's probably me using it wrong more than anything. I mean, I don't think this is my camera. Okay. So this is like a Canon EOS Rebel T7i. This is what I normally shoot on. So it's, you know, I mean, it can do pretty high quality stuff, but I'm sure I'm just using it bad because I'm dumb. I'm bad at technology because I am an old person. Any suggestions on first timer Zenithal priming for a warm gray? Suggestion on first timer Zenithal priming for a warm gray final color. Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, just go up to like any. If you're looking for specific paints, I can't help you there. But something like the what would the aforementioned bright warm gray and dark warm gray from Pro Acryl would actually be really great for that. Because then you could just couple little glazes over the top to smooth everything and get some volume in there, and you're good to go. Best way to practice getting paint consistency right as a beginner. Paint a lot with deliberately trying to practice that. Like, force yourself to do it. Just repeatedly paint on, pick it. You're working on a squad. I am going to glaze on this miniature, right? And so just do that. And do that on all 10 models. Force yourself to do it a lot. You know, like, one of the reasons I always paint eyes on every mini I ever paint is because it's forced practice. And, like, now I've gotten to the point where eyes don't bother me anymore because I've painted thousands of eyes on all the minis I've done, right? So, like, the key is you just keep doing it and make that a part of your deliberate practice. The real key with your paint consistency, by the way, Beatrice, for a beginner, is wicking the paint off. So I keep a paper towel next to me at all points in time, and this is what they look like when they're done. This is one from a recent project. Okay? Because I'm constantly taking my brush, I'm putting it in the paint, getting the like thinning it down, getting it to the thinness I want, and then I'm touching it over here with a paper towel multiple times to get all that excess liquid out. Because you don't want it to be, you don't want too much liquid. That's what's going to kill you more than anything. All right. The Withered Moth question, more of a community-based question. Are we going to see you feature on Trapped Under Plastic? No, we didn't record an episode when we were out there. We didn't record much of anything. I think maybe Sam shot a little footage. You know, I mean, we just hung out. We weren't really interested in sort of doing content. The whole kind of point of the weekend was to just chill out. So I mean, I would love to go back at some point in time, and I'm gonna try to have all of them here at some point in time in the future. We'll see how that works out. Once people can sort of get on airplanes again, and yeah, I mean, eventually, sure, anything's possible. I would certainly go on an episode. It would be, but the two of them have a wonderful dynamic together. I don't know that they need me in there screwing it up. Like, yeah, just John and Scott are both really funny when they're together. Okay. I never used AK Interactive acrylics yet, so what paint brand would you say they are most similar to? Vallejo Model Color. They're pretty similar. A little bit, maybe more pigment intense, but that's a very similar thing. Let's see. Was planning on getting the Infinity CP Plus airbrush, but my first airbrush sounds like that's a bad idea. Yeah, exactly. Like, I would not get something that nice as your first airbrush. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Would you give a 16-year-old a new BMW? No. They're going to mess that up. So, no. Get it. If it's your first airbrush, just get something cheap. Okay? Get something cheap you can break and throw in the trash. And that is what it is. Like, that's the right answer. Then, eventually, if you're comfortable and you want to spend some money, sure, go ahead. They're really nice airbrushes. Grady, Vince, how would you handle freehand and or transfers over oils? New to oils, I'm planning to paint the first oil coat, varnish, freehand, then do touch-ups, highlights. I would do it exactly like what you just said. I mean, if you go watch my Crimson Fist video, you'll see I use a ton of oils and then go into freehand and back and forth. So watch that Crimson Fist video, and that's exactly what I would do, because that's what I did. Okay. Let's see. Justin Smith, I have 3D printers and Patreon subs. You're really excited about painting, but struggling to get through sets. Not finishing since I am getting discouraged with results. Focusing on one model at a time better. Can be, depending where you're at, or just to. I mean, part of it is just making sure you set your expectations accordingly. I've spent 15,000 hours in the past 7 years painting. Okay, how many hours have you spent? Like, and that's by the way, my number isn't that big. Go look at somebody like James Wapple. He's probably spent 50,000 hours, 60,000 hours painting over the past 20 years, 25 years. And he, so like there's just a, there's a scale here, right? You've got to set your expectations accordingly. Like, proper expectations are important. So like when you're starting, don't look at stuff that's on the box art or on that and think that's what you're trying to get at. That takes time. And that will happen. You'll get there. The key is deliberate practice of individual things. Don't try to get to like some whole perfect project. Get to one thing you like. All right? Like, I'm going to work on making this robe have some nice contrast. Great. Do that. Right? And if you fail, that's okay. Look at it and figure out where it didn't work. And if it did work, then you're good to go. Right? And you've learned something. Or focus on just paint cleanliness or something like that, right? But yeah, when you can work on 1 model or 5 models or 10 models. The key is that deliberate practice. Chuck and Deb, let's see. Your creativity is inspiring. Well, thank you very much. That's very nice. Listening while painting dwarves. A great brown wash using Liquitex Burnt Umber Pro Acrylic Transparent Brown. And very thick coffee for my French press. Nice. Dorigo, fishing line for the blood droplets. Yeah, exactly. That's another great example. Thank you. Yes, fishing line. Perfect. Yes. That's not what that is. I think I just found a long plastic string from a tag or something. But yeah, that would work great. I'm trying to get the classic gray drow flesh, but it keeps looking like dead gray flesh. How would you make drow flesh? It's actually kind of a common question. It's been on my list to paint forever, just forever. But I just never found an excuse to do it. The key is to add in purples and reds into the deep black shadows, and to add in very light, soft blues into the highlights. Like, they need to have cold highlights because they're generally drawn underground, and they need to have warm shadows. So, like, the integration of color is the answer, just like with all flesh tone. Justin, any suggestions on a plan on building the skills to paint more often? Sit down every day and make it part of your daily schedule. Clear out other things, other decision making that you do. Like, don't waste time. Don't play video games. Don't just sit there in front of the television or whatever. Like, don't surf social media and read Facebook for 3 hours every day. Like, clear out the non-value adds of your life and say, I'm going to spend 15 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour painting. Keep everything on your desk ready to paint. Use a wet palette so your paint's out and ready. You just take the lid off and you go. Keep your brushes handy, your water cup handy, your wipey paper towel handy. Keep everything in hand. So there is zero, like, when I want to paint, I literally sit down in this chair and 10 seconds later I can be painting. That's it. Clear out everything that's a barrier to entry. Right? And then you make the most of your time. Let's see. Paul, hey Vince, how do you make rivets for sci-fi train bases? I used to slice thin styrene rods, but the end result doesn't look that great. A bit too thick. There's many ways. So here's a couple. You can do that, like you said, with thin styrene. It depends on the size of the bolt you're going for. You can roll out really, really, really thin snakes of green stuff. Like, really thin it out. Like, keep doing the roll and spread trick. So you roll and then you spread your fingers, and you roll and then you spread your fingers, and you roll and then you spread your fingers. And you do that until you get like really little bitty thin snakes. You let it dry, then you just come in with your hobby knife and slice those really thin. Also, if you want, you can take something like, if you're trying to just do like small rivets, you can take something like your Perfect Putty, and then you take like a round shapy tool, like that. You make a little thing of your putty, you dip the round shapy tool in, and you just go dot, 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 redip in the putty, dot, 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 redip in the putty, dot, 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 and so on. And that'll work. That's how I did the rivets on the decking of my big ironclad that I made. Because you can make your really, really, really small dots. John J. I want to do a lush red wizard's cloak, flowing, rolling style cloak. Model's skin color I'm looking for is like that of Jason Momoa. Okay. Are you looking for like a skin color recipe, or are you looking for the red cloak? The key with the red is to integrate like just a lot of white undercoating, and then take a nice bright red over that, and lots of intense red glazes. Um, as to like Jason Momoa's skin tone, that's the addition of like some sepia or raw umber into like your more neutral Caucasian flesh tones, and that'll give you that really nice tan effect. At the same time, you want to be integrating your standard red still and stuff like that. So yeah, how about that? Hopefully that helps. Hunter, hey Vince, what would you recommend for sculpting green stuffing? I haven't tried it out yet and wonder where I should start. Like I said, and I mentioned this earlier, but you might not have been here yet. I'm not a sculptor, but so there's lots of good channels that are. Trevarian has a lot of stuff about it. Marok Wolf, Marrok space Wolf, has some great green stuffing videos. But start simple with things like purity seals or feathers or blood droplets or whatever. Just start with little simple things and get the basic shapes down of, you want to be able to master like the drop and the snake. And once you get those two shapes down, you can do a lot from the drop and the snake. And but yeah, go check out those channels. I have a video on basic green stuffing techniques where I kind of walk through the drop and the snake and stuff like that. So you could always check that out. As to whether or not you have to use actual green stuff, no, you could use like green stuff, gray stuff, brown stuff. There's a whole bunch of things. And they're all fine. How many fully painted armies do you have? 16 sounds right. I think that's my running number. It's either 16 or 17. So something like that. I mean, I've been in the hobby for 23 years, so I hope I've accomplished something. Yes. Yes, Mikey, that's what I'm doing. So the flock's dyed color is like a base color, and you're just adding highlights and shades. Yes, correct. Let's see. Chris Robinson. Hello, Vince. I'm looking to get into airbrushing. Do they go on sale, or the price is fairly static? Honestly, they're fairly static. Now, one notable exception. Once a year, Badger Airbrush on Ken's birthday, he's the owner of the company, he does a deal where he has a bunch of different airbrushes you can buy for however old he is in dollars. So he's in his 50s now. So it's probably like 55 or 56 bucks or something like that. And you can order many of the airbrushes in their line for that price. It's a great deal. It will take a while because they get so many orders. So like it will take about 6 months after your order probably to get your 3 to 6 months at least to get your airbrush. That being said, again, if you want to just get a simple starter airbrush, that master kit I recommended comes with the compressor, the tubes, everything else you need, which is really important when you start out, for like $80 to $100. So there you go. But for the most part, the rest are pretty static. David, when are you going to sell your wicking paper? Oh, I did. It got auctioned off. So it did. Somebody did win that. I don't remember who, but yeah, somebody did win my A Year of Wasted Paint art piece. So that was super cool. The Nova Open Charitable Foundation was really nice. I wanted to do something, a big art piece like that, and they said they'd be happy to auction it off for charity. So that was cool. Let's see. Okay. We're about like an hour and 15 in, so I'm going to go into a little more hurry up mode here. So if you've got some final questions, drop them in now, and as I move through in a little more lightning round. Let's see. Remus, any good advice on the cloaks for the new Warcry Shadow Elves cloaks? Integrate blue and purple into it. Lots of wet blending or oil paints are going to make that a really simple, easy task. Same with your airbrush. That's another good, easy way to go with it. But, the integration of colors into the black is going to be what you're going to want to do to make those pop. Wacky Wookie, I'm starting a bust and I want a bluish Moon source of lighting. How would you do that in the skin and a beige jacket without making them look blue? You use glacier blue as your highlight, or ice blue. It's this color right here. This is your final highlight color. Then you integrate this into your tones. From your mid-tone up, that some of that paint gets integrated. That's how you make cold highlights in the same way that you can make warm highlights by using, you know, more neutral Caucasian flesh tones and other paint colors, or ice yellow or something like that. So there you go. Why do you undercoat Zenithal highlight with Vallejo pens or gray instead of black? Because black is too dark. It ends up having a lot of other negative externalities. It's actually made from mostly blue. I don't actually want true black on the miniature as a shadow. Shadows aren't dead black. It's a slightly lighter color, and it's easier to move around while still providing a realistic shadow. Steven, I was dipping the makeup sponges into mineral spirits to remove the excess of oil paints from some minis, and they would start to disintegrate within a minute or so. I don't put white spirits into them. I just dry wipe. If I need to use white spirits, I'll use either a very small soft piece of cloth, like use something that's normally, get an extra piece of cloth that's normally used for cleaning eye lenses. You can get, again, just big packs these for a couple bucks, like for glasses. And those I dip in white spirits and then wipe them mostly off if I need to use white spirits. But most of the time you really don't need to use white spirits to clean up. That's almost going to be usually too aggressive. Synard's miniature painting. Hey Vince, how's it going? Oh, it's going well. Going well. What's your go-to for orc shadow on green skin tone? Hull red. That is my go-to shadow. I love the look of a deep hull red as an orc skin shadow. Let's see. Oh yeah, John Ashley Smith mentioning that there are also scale nuts and rivets produced for model railroading. Yep, good call. Absolutely. Always go to the scale modeling folks. They've got everything you need. The number of like tools and insane things they have are crazy. It's great. If you've got a good hobby shop that has really like a huge focus on scale modeling, you can just lose yourself in there. Mossberg's hobby. What's the main difference for use of green stuff, brown stuff? I think there's one other gray stuff. None. Just different colors of epoxy putty, because green stuff's more of just a specific thing. They all more or less are going to be the same. Now, some of them are slightly more malleable. Some of them have slightly longer drying time or shorter drying time, or dry a little harder, or have a little more give, or a little easier to carve or sand or whatever. But, you know, for the most part, if you're starting out, they're all going to be equivalent. Let's see. Fluorescent paints from Vallejo have a pretty gloss finish. Any way to combat that? I mean, use a different fluorescent paint would be my answer. I don't really love Vallejo's fluorescent paints. My go-tos are watercolors and scale 75s, which are very matte. That being said, you can either over the top or mixing in a tiny amount of AK Interactive Ultra Matte Varnish. It's always the answer. AK Interactive Ultra Matte Varnish is the most matte thing in the world, and despite how dumb that company was recently with their stupid thing, they still make a good product there, so there you go. Let's see. Gare, hey Vince, just want to say thank you so much for everything you do. It's invaluable to newcomers like myself. Oh, well, that's wonderful to hear. Well, thank you very much. I'm always glad to help. Yep, there you go. Steven talking about the airbrush sale, so there you go. Quick, what would you tell someone who is getting into AOS from 40K? Advice on starting your first AOS army? Yeah, look around, depending on what the army is, look at maybe secondhand stuff, figure out a paint scheme you want to do, start small, build in. We kind of did a whole show about it this week, so I would say go watch that show, because we talked about starting an army. But look at the start collecting boxes and find if there's a start collecting box that fits what you want. That's usually the good way to start, because it's not too much stuff. It'll give you a nice, good base to work from and let you develop paint schemes and things like that. Hey Vince, just look through the how-to videos. Maybe I'm blind, but I don't see an airbrushing with watercolors. Could only find airbrushing with pro acryl. Oh, I thought I did an airbrushing with watercolors. Maybe I didn't. I apologize if I didn't. If I'm mistaken, I will openly admit I don't always keep all my videos straight. So I'll just say it this way: the key with airbrushing with watercolors is to mix at least 1-to-1 at minimum with your thinner and flow improver mix. So I use a standard 80-20 mix of Vallejo thinner to flow improver, both Vallejo. Mix 1-to-1. Make sure you get them well mixed up. You need to break up the gel medium, and then they'll airbrush like a dream. So there's the answer. James, I have an Iwata Ninja air compressor, but it only goes to 20 psi. I want to upgrade to a higher psi compressor. I mean, you really don't often need to go above 20 psi, but there's like a, yeah, sure, just the simple master airbrush compressor with a tank on the bottom. I mean, it's still small. This thing is like this big. Like, it's not that big. I mean, it would fit anywhere. It's like 2 feet long by 18 inches tall by 8 inches wide, maybe. Like, that's not a big thing. But yeah, the master airbrush compressor with the tank. Buy cheap airbrush compressors like that. Don't spend a lot of money on airbrush compressors. They're all the same thing. They're all made in the same factory. All right, Whiskey Tango. Looks like we're about to the end of our questions. So good. Well, we're coming right down to it. I think you tend to like elaborate bases. I do. But have you ever found minimalist basing that you liked? Sure, sometimes some good rollers can be fun. Like the basing that I did for my sewer bases, which there'll be a video coming out on in a couple weeks, were pretty simple, really. I like to feel like they live in a world. That's the key. It can be any world. It just needs to feel like a world, and that generally means some amount of detail, color, contrast, visual interest, detail. You know, something that makes them feel like they occupy a space. Yeah, there you go. Airbrush thinner and medium okay to use with brushes? Yes, absolutely. Whoever's telling you no is full of it. You could just go by. So these two things, like Vallejo airbrush thinner and Vallejo flow improver. Like I said, my standard airbrush mix is an 80-20 mix of those two. Thinner 80%, flow improver 20%. I could use that as my medium all the time, with brush and without. Anybody who's telling you different is crazy or wrong in some way. So there you go. All right. So I think that brings us to the end. I have no more questions. We did it. Yay. We did it. Okay. So with that, I will say thank you very much, everybody. I really appreciate it. I hope this was all fun today. I try to do these. I try to do these as often as possible, like generally once a month. Always on Saturdays. You can always hit the little bell or stuff like that, and that will tell you when these are coming. Also, follow me on Twitter. I always announce them in advance on Twitter, so that's a good place to look. The quick final question I do want to answer, Robert said, you said you didn't train as an artist, correct? Where do you suggest learning color theory? James Gurney's Color and Light. That's the book. It's the go-to book. There you go. I mean, you can also watch like 50 million YouTube videos on it as well, but that's a good one. That's your go-to resource. Will I do a forest basing video? I mean, the autumnal base is kind of like that. I did a jungle one. You know, you could just kind of mix those two and you get to forest, I suppose. So there you go. I'll be back next month with another one of these. So save up those questions. But as always, if you've got additional ones I didn't get to answer, just drop them down in the comments. I will answer any questions that get asked down in the comments, as always. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And as always, we'll see you next time.